Welcome to 40 Below Zero, an international podcast about life with invisible illnesses, hosted by two guys living with multiple sclerosis. Coming to you from the Keystone State of Pennsylvania, I'm your co-host Nix, and with me on this ride is Terry, a Londoner who calls Ontario home. We're so happy you're here with us as we continue to try and normalize a life that is anything but. So let's get into it. What's up, Warriors? Welcome back to another show. Super glad you're here with us, as always. If you're new, welcome. Terry, how are you, man?
I'm good. I'm good. Same old.
Yeah? Well,
Yeah.
let me tell you, we just got hit with a little bit of a winter activity these last couple of days, which for most of us, but especially for me, extreme cold or extreme hot doesn't work well. So I try to avoid going outside as much as I can, but inevitably you have to try to get dressed, get out there and clear some snow so you don't get stuck in for a few days. So I did what I could. I had some help, which was nice, but I don't know if I won the battle. There's still too much snow, and all I feel is tired and in pain. And I had a fatigue morning where I sat down on the couch, and another hour went by, and I don't remember that. I fell asleep. So
You know what I feel guilty about? Waking up and seeing people outside my window taking
mm,
that ice off the windshield, and all you hear is,
it's the worst. And this happened. Well, what's today? Today's Monday. It was Friday was my infusion.
okay.
So I had just gotten the Ocrevus. It takes a couple of days to kind of feel right again,
Mhm.
and so not feeling great. And then it snows like that. It's just those that get it, they understand. It's like you just don't have the energy, but you have to just try to do what you can. So I'm struggling a little bit today, a little slower than normal. Um,
It's okay. We all understand, man. So you did your Orcavis.
mhm.
Do you have an MRI set up already?
Listen, it's been so crazy this last month with me. I don't even know. I go to see my neurologist this Friday, and he'll probably send me for one. So I don't have one scheduled, but I wouldn't be surprised if he says, "Hey, listen, you had a fall in the end of December, you were in the hospital in the beginning of January, and you just got your infusion. So let's." I wouldn't be surprised if he just sends me for one. And maybe because my leg was impacted, like I talked about a couple weeks ago, he'll probably do the whole thing. So it'll probably be the whole 3 hour MRI just to see if anything new's there. So that's enough. That's enough about me bitching. What about you?
No, bro, you never bitch. First of all, I need to see what you really look like.
Oh,
Okay, let's move on. Yeah, I'm good, bro. I wanted to get my Hep B shot, which is like in Canada, it's not covered. No matter
mm,
what, it's not covered. And even my doctor's like, I cannot believe it's not covered. It's 200 and somewhat dollars. Okay.
wow.
And
Yeah.
whatever, it's okay. So I um scheduled it. I was gonna go. I was pumped. I woke up, our car wouldn't start. So it kind of ruins the whole day because dude, it takes a lot of energy just to get yourself motivated to go. And the car wouldn't start. So that just killed everything for that day, which is okay. But another thing is, see, this is my bitching moment, bro. I have a doctor's appointment coming up on Thursday, so I had to book my transportation. I
Oh
was
yeah.
on the phone 4 hours. They were busy. 4 hours. That's not right. And that's my
Mm,
only like. I could use Katrina and say, hey, I need you to drive me, but she works on Thursday. I don't want to bother her. I want to be independent and all that stuff. 4 hours to get my ride booked. It's
mm.
garbage. Anyway, that's my bitching for the day.
Could you get an ADA Uber?
No, we don't have that. First of all, in my city, it's not big enough.
Oh
But I do have taxi rides here that are, but are really pricey. It ain't,
yeah.
you know,
No, yeah.
I would end up doing that to be honest with you because I need to go to my doctor's, which is funny because my neurologist wants me to get blood work done. So he gave me the form to do my blood work, and he told me to go to my doctor to tell him that I'm fatigued so I can get another form for more blood work. How come my neurologist can't just do that?
Yeah,
How come
that's interesting.
I don't get it?
I don't get it either. And you know what? Honestly,
Yeah.
I feel like it would cause more stress and more fatigue. I mean, if they're trying to fatigue you so that they could get blood work done, then they're accomplishing that. But
Because I said to him, I'm like, how do I check my vitamin D levels? I
mm,
really need to check it. And he's like, what's the reason? I'm like, I don't know. I just want to know what's going on. If I'm taking the right dosage, is that what's making me fatigued that I don't take enough? He goes,
mm.
there you go. Go to your doctor, tell him that you'd like blood work because of fatigueness, and he will give you, I'll keep you updated.
Yeah, that is interesting. Maybe I
Yeah.
don't know how it works in your health network if your neurologist can't just do a regular blood blood work panel. I've never run into that.
Mm.
I've had either my, I guess you would call it your GP. So I'd either have my GP or my neuro right for whatever, and then they just share the information.
Maybe I'm just not speaking up enough. Maybe I should be like, no, you give me that blood work form, or what is it called? Requisition. There you go.
Yeah, I know what you meant. But yeah, nothing. It just seems like the reverse. I feel like if they were trying to make your life easier, they could just have you fill out one form once instead of two doctors with two different forms. That's a lot,
Yeah.
especially with
Yeah.
like we literally just talking about your mobility needs. Like
Right. And
you're gonna spend $300 on an Uber to go from one place to another.
I know my doctor would do it over the phone, so that would
Mhm.
be cool. But I want to see him. I haven't seen my doctor since I got this doctor 4 years ago
Oh,
because of COVID
like in person or at all?
in person. I
Okay,
talked to him on the phone like 4 or 5 times.
okay. I was
Yeah.
like, Terry, that's a long time to not be in contact with your doctor.
COVID. So, and it's funny because I had issues. I'm like, hey, I might have an issue with my hernia. I didn't. Everything's okay. But I'm like, I might have it. And she's like, oh, I'll send you to an ultrasound. We'll check it out. I'm like, okay, cool. You don't want to see me? All right.
I feel like
I don't even know what he looks like.
I feel like they're so overworked anymore, no matter where you go. Um, that you just I don't know, you can almost walk in and just be like, this is what I need. You almost have to demand it.
Yeah.
Otherwise you're just gonna get bounced around.
Yeah.
I did talk to Neuro about the Ocrevus, the injection. Remember we were talking about the once a
Yeah.
month
Let's talk about
injectable.
that. Yeah.
It is a thing. It is on their website. It's just not appropriate for me, and that's good because it's once a. I would, since it's not at home, you have to have the injection administered to you.
Oh, okay.
Uh, so that means I would have to go to the hospital, to the infusion center once a month, and
Okay.
and they still require pre meds for half an hour, then the 10-minute injection, and then an hour of wait time.
10
So
minute injection.
yeah, apparently they start a line and then they hook in the Ocrevus and then they just push slowly over 10 minutes.
That's not an injection. That's infused.
I
Okay. Okay.
I don't know. Well, the difference is there's no when the Ocrevus is being delivered, there's no other solution with it. So it's not with like uh saline.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just like the concentrate basically. Getting the
Yeah.
concentrated dose for that month, which I would imagine if you're someone who suffers from like extreme crap gap,
Yeah.
then maybe getting it every month would be the way to go. But
Hmm.
you know, I just feel run down for about 2 to 3 weeks. I don't, it doesn't take me out of the game all the way. So
Don't change what's not broken.
yeah, that's why I'm sticking with it. And
Awesome.
unless until there's another for me anyway, until there's another infusible medication, I'm just gonna stay where I'm at because it's doing something, I think.
See, people are excited because they're like, oh, I don't have to waste a day going to get infused if I can just take a shot at home and get it over with 2 minutes, just kind of like Kasemta, not to
Right.
downplay Kasemta, but
No, no, I know what you're saying, but a lot of
to,
people are going that route because of that. It's,
yeah,
it's a fine line. I mean, you really got to do your research. There's just we're lucky enough to have so many options now. Um,
yeah, that's right.
like does taking a pill once a day or three times a day work for you? Does taking Copaxone like three self injections or there's so many options now. You really can tailor it to what you need. So we are definitely lucky in that sense now.
Yeah, that's for sure. We are.
But not for me. So I'll just wait until the next infusible comes out. Just
I don't. Listening to that, I don't know if I would even approach him and say, "Hey, maybe I will. I'll ask him about it," but I wouldn't push to get it myself.
yeah, well, see, depends on your insurance. You may have the option where I don't, but you may have the option where a nurse comes to you and does it right at home. That would be worth it. But unfortunately, it's a half-hour drive. Got to park in the garage, get up to the infusion center,
Yeah,
and then an hour and a half later you're done. Then you have to undo the whole.
yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. I
but
don't
yeah, I
know.
would definitely ask about it. It's the same medication.
Yeah,
Hmm. Might be a
it,
little easier for you.
we'll see. I'll keep you updated on that for sure. So, other than that, how you feeling today? Honestly, and then we'll get into that thing you're wearing.
Oh, this.
Yeah,
uh,
therma fur,
I think that's what it says.
therma
Yeah.
fur.
Man, you got better eyes than I do, and you don't even have your glasses on. So this is another piece of adaptive clothing that I wear.
Okay.
So I have the cooling vests. This is a heated vest. There's pockets in here so you can take those hand warmers, that you
Yeah,
crack and then you shake up the
yeah.
hand warmers, and there's pockets in here so you can put the hand warmers in here.
Cool.
Um, the
Damn
vest,
it!
the vest is enough.
I just gave away my hand warmers. Someone upstairs who, anyway, yeah. Damn it.
But yeah, I've had this for a little while now. The vest alone is enough, so I don't have any hand warmers in it. But if I was gonna have to be outside for any length of time, um, it's another life-saving piece of equipment for me. Um, so
How much
no,
was it? No,
no,
because usually all this stuff is really
50 bucks
pricey.
maybe.
Oh, cool. American. That's like
Yeah.
5,000 Canadian.
No, it's probably about 40, 50 bucks. Amazon.
Cool. Not bad.
I
Yeah.
mean,
You know
the
what?
one nice, yeah, the one nice thing about everything existing on Amazon is that you can get what you need.
Definitely. I am the Amazon god.
I highly recommend it if you have cold weather intolerance for any reason. Not that they're a sponsor, but they could be. Hint, hint.
Not hint, hints. Hurry up and sponsor us with those.
Yeah, right.
What are you talking about? Yeah,
Season 4, we need sponsors.
that's cool. I'm actually going to look into that because I always feel like my temperature is always, I'm always colder than I'm
Hmm.
always feeling like it's never warm enough.
Yeah, got to keep your core warm.
And if it's warm enough, it's usually too warm for me and it slows me down. Can you hear my voice? I feel like I'm pushing my voice out. Like I feel like I'm a lot of energy to talk. I'm okay, but
Yeah,
my voice, I feel like it's just hard to push my voice
I'm
out.
hearing you fine.
Cool. Okay, maybe it's just in my head.
All this is in your head, Terry.
It's always in my head, man. I don't have MS. It's in my head. You're just getting old.
Yeah, that's it. Well, Terry, we are getting older.
So I just got an email
Okay.
from Parkwood Fitness Center. It's that place that has all the adaptive equipment,
Oh yeah, right, right.
and there was a wait list. And they told me the wait list is going to be a year to 2 years or something like that, which is crazy. And
That
I
is
just got an
crazy.
email saying the wait list is coming along. I guess something happened, and they're
Nice.
asking if I'm still interested. There's a position that's opening up soon, so I'm excited. I might,
That's awesome, dude.
yeah, cool.
Gonna go. become the next power lifter.
Relax.
So Terry, tell us a little bit about our guest for today's episode, Aleem. I say that right?
Yes, you did.
All right, thank you.
Aleem Jaffer, another Canadian. He was one of the cast members on Push, which was on CBC Gem. Did some modeling. This guy has a list of.
We got to talk about that. That's cool.
Yeah, actually, it's cool because one of the things he was wearing was Tommy Hilfiger. So when I was watching this video of him modeling it on the
Okay.
runway, I was thinking in my mind, I'm like, man, that must be so uncomfortable, because it's a brand, and
Hmm.
and then I found out it was adaptive clothing that he was
Oh,
also
really?
modeling. So I'm like, oh, that's either custom or did Tommy make them? Did
Yeah, I
they?
didn't know Tommy had. We'll have to ask him about that.
I've bought a few adaptive clothing, shoes, pants.
No, you
Yeah,
did?
yeah, yeah. For Christmas, I got some clothing too.
Making
So
life a little easier for yourself?
the shoes is pretty cool. The zipper shoes, and you don't
Oh,
even
yeah.
doesn't even look like adaptive shoes unless you see the zipper. You're like, what's that? You're like, check this out. And then once you unzip it, people usually, I feel like people get awkward. They're like, oh, that's cool. I'm like, relax. It's not Velcro. Velcro is cool too, but it's not Velcro. It's a zipper. So
That is cool.
it is cool.
And
I
the point is not to look like adaptive, right?
yeah, sorry, but yes. The point is in life not to look adaptive.
Well, that's a lot. You know what? That's a very true statement, Terry. A lot of people we talk to, a lot of things we talk about are all about how we're trying to remain the normal we were before all this. So it it does mess us up a little bit when we have to do things like I mean, I think that's probably one of the barriers to mobility aids is people don't want to project their disability,
Yeah, I agree with you.
and that's probably the um, one of the barriers to like yourself, how long to wait to get into the wheelchair. I mean, we've talked about that a lot too, um, which is a shame.
That's why when I got my chair and I finally sat in it and I was going to use it every day, I'm like, okay, I got to make this look cool
Hmm.
since I'm going to be in public.
That's how I was when I first needed a cane. I
Yeah,
was like, well, if I'm gonna need so that's why I got the one with like the skull top, and it looked pretty
yeah.
badass.
Okay. So I see Aleem is in the waiting room.
Oh, great.
Awesome. Aleem, it's so nice to see you again.
Oh, very nice to see you as well.
Good
So Nick, Aleem, Nick, and it's Aleem Jaffer,
pleasure.
right?
Aleem Jaffer, yes, correct.
That's right.
Pleasure. Thanks for being on our show today.
No worries, no worries.
So I kind of already introduced you before you came in, saying, of course, you're a CP warrior. You've modeled and you said some cool quotes that I already kind of talked about that I want to talk to you about as well and see
Okay,
what,
sure.
and yeah, let me just start with that if you don't mind, Nick.
Absolutely.
We're talking to my Nick, not your Nick.
Okay, yeah, because this is gonna be a tricky podcast because I have a version of Nick as well. So,
It
okay,
is.
I know when we were exchanging information, it was like your Nick said this and my Nick said this, so there's no confusion. So that's awesome.
Hey, Nick's always welcome to join us if he wants, if he's around, just so you know. It's up to you.
Yeah, no worries.
So what you said is just because you have a disability doesn't make you an automatic expert in disability.
That's correct.
You yourself are learning along as you go. If you put yourself in a situation where accommodations are needed, you will not know until you're put into that process.
That's absolutely correct.
That is gold. It's gold for me too, because I feel like I'm always shamed if I'm not ready. When
I've learned the hard way actually. I also felt the same pressures when I was putting into new situations, and then was very hard on myself when things would not work out. And I came to the conclusion that you know what, I don't know everything about my disability. I know a lot of it, and I've lived with it, yeah, but I'm not in new situations. I'm also learning, and I've learned that very quickly when I was, looking for jobs in the beginning of my career, and when I would get hired on for some. projects, and they'd be like, "Oh, why didn't you tell us before?" And I said, "Well, I didn't know before, right? I've never been put in this situation before." And it would be almost like, "Oh, well, you should have known." And it's like, well, I'm also learning with you, so it's a learning curve for all of us. So yeah, that's why I have said that, because that was a thing I had learned, or have learned over the years.
That's huge for taking away anxiety because now now you have this diagnosis. Now you have this. You're trying to think of every single thing from now until the end of time. You're trying to
Yeah.
be prepared for everything, and that's so true. Just cut yourself a break. You don't have to.
Well, yeah, and the thing is, I remember going to job interviews before in my beginning of my career. Now I have a really good job with employabilities, and I'm very happy there. They're very good to me. But until I got to that point, I would always have, during interviews and during, applying for jobs, I'd be really stressed out on what I should be revealing, how I should be revealing it. Have I revealed enough, or have I not revealed enough? So I'd always have that. There's a lot of anxiety there when you're trying to get yourself established when you have a disability as well.
See, I feel like, because you obviously know we have multiple sclerosis, I feel like a lot of us are already working as we get MS. So
That's right. Yeah.
from then we got to start speaking up. And a lot of people are scared to speak up, so they hide it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I'm not saying that we're different, but
To be honest, if I did not have a visible disability, I would probably not disclose it until I really, really had to. The only reason why I disclose my disability is because I'm in a wheelchair, so you can't really hide the fact that you come up in a wheelchair, say, "Hey, I'm here for the interview." And for the first part of my career, like when I did go to interviews, I started off gradually. So I started off not telling people that I had a disability, and then when I got to the interview, that's when they found out, to the point where it got very awkward sometimes. Like, you could see the look on the interviewer's face going, "Holy crap, what are we gonna do now?" Right? Without being so um without being mean or anything. They'd be thrown off. I'd be thrown off. And it got to a point where I did decide, okay, by the end of it, I just disclosed it during my cover letters, and in um when I would be getting a phone call for interviews, like telephone interviews, I would disclose my disability then, because I'd gotten to a point where I said, you know what, if they want me, they want me as the entire person. If the company's good enough for to kind of accept my disability, then that's a company I want to work for anyway. So that's kind of how I led my journey after the hurdles I went through looking for employment and stuff like that.
you're the one that said never feel ashamed of who you are, never hide your true identity,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely, absolutely. Well, it's absolutely true, but there's a journey that you have to go through. With my disability, I was never ashamed of my disability. I was always because that's all I knew, right? That's how I was born. I mean, um, that from the Wheelie Peep group, I'm the one that's a little bit different because I was born with my disability. So I've never had that moment of transition where I was like, okay, I was able bodied and then had to end up in a wheelchair. With so and for me that was a blessing in disguise, is where I didn't really know the difference. So I was
Mhm.
never really ashamed of it. I
Mhm.
think even growing up, kids were very good about it. Like, you get the odd, kids who don't really understand it, so they bully you sometimes. But
Of course.
overall, as you get older, less and less is a bit of an issue. Like, kids are very accepting, I find. It's only when you get into um, the latter part of your life, when you're looking for employment, or you're wanting to get married, or when you're doing the big adulty stuff, is
Yeah.
that's when
Yeah,
it becomes a bit of a, oh God, you're disabled. But
happens all
yeah,
the
so
time.
I was just gonna say that, growing up with a disability, it was quite easy, and so I didn't have to adapt as much. But going into the real work world, and the getting employed, and then having to do, getting into relationships and stuff, that was where my disability had to be, something that I had to consider quite heavily.
I hear what you're saying because for me, a lot of those milestones had been reached in life before my disability happened. So I had already was in a marriage. I already had employment. Like I had all of those things. I didn't have to think about that. And honestly, because of that, I've never actually thought about it. So it's an interesting way to look at the world that I have not had to do.
Well, the funny thing is, like, when I was so, I've always been around people that have been very disability friendly. So when I did end up going into a workforce that, or didn't or the labor force that didn't understand disability, it was a kind of a eye opener for me, because I was always under the impression that, if you saw me in a wheelchair, you'd be, generally people are good, and they wouldn't mind. But when I went into the work world, I realized that not all people are made equally, and people mean well, right? They all
Yeah.
mean well, but sometimes they just can't do the last little part and say, okay, you know what, we are totally new with this, but we're okay to accept it, and let's see what we can do and work together. That there are people like that, but there are a lot of other people, other types of individuals who have a difficult time with that. And so I learned that very quickly. And then even in the dating world, before I met my marvelous Nick, um there was a lot of times where I met good people, and most of the time people were good, but I did have comments like, oh my god, I can't, you're such a nice guy, I just wish you weren't disabled, or I wish you
Oh my,
didn't have
wow.
I wish you didn't have a disability, because I'm sorry, man, but I just can't deal with it. You know what I mean? And you know
Wow.
what, fair. There's a lot of people in the world that have never been exposed to disabilities, who have
Mhm.
not had to deal with anything like that. So when I come about and they're like, "Oh, what do I do now?" So, and they're trying to cope with it, but I guess because they've never been exposed to it, they don't really know how to react, right? And I rather they be upfront with me than not tell me and feel bad for me and want to date me because they feel guilty of saying no, because that
Yeah.
does happen sometimes,
Yeah.
um so yeah, it's that's the only time I really really felt my disability be a weakness, because I was trying to move ahead in life, and
Hmm.
I always found that my disability came in the way for a while. I mean, I was able to overcome it. Obviously, I have a nice job. I have a wonderful husband, right? But all those things really did delay my growth. It really stumped the growth. I would have liked to be married a long time ago. I would have liked to have a job a long time ago. You know what I mean?
It makes
Yeah.
So,
sense why you are currently a job developer,
uh,
because you struggled. So now you're helping, you're advocating for others.
Well, to be honest, I didn't even know that job existed. I actually fell into this job.
Okay.
Um, I went into an HR background because I had finance to begin with,
Okay.
and really enjoyed the banking industry. But I realized it wasn't really set up at the time that I was getting into the career. It wasn't really set up for people with disabilities,
Okay.
and so there was a lot of pressure there, and I found that it wasn't for me, and I didn't like it. So I ended up rerouting my career into HR and thinking I'd go into HR. And I was noticing that I was still kind of having the same problem. So when I went into employment services at the time, I went to employabilities, and I said to them, this was like my 10th or 11th year looking for work on and off. And I said to them, look, I said, you know what? I want to volunteer my time, because right now I'm looking for work, but I don't want to waste my time having this big gap and not being able to get employed. And they let me volunteer with them for about a few months, and it was then that they realized that no, I had good potential, and they wanted to hire me on. And then that's when I started off being an employment coach,
Okay.
and then from the employment coaching side, they said, we have job development. And I was like, what is job development? No idea what that is. Like, do I
Yeah.
create jobs, or what does that entail? And they explained to me that, you'd be a liaison between an employer and the client, and you would try to advocate for the client and the employer to see if they can match up people. And I said, wow, that seems awesome. But how do you do that? Because
Yeah,
I was still dealing with my anxieties and self-esteem issues about employment. So over time, I learned, and I got comfortable with the process. And over time, I was able to, like you're right, Terry. I was able to draw upon my experiences, and I realized that maybe I went through all those things that I went through for a reason, because now I can draw upon my own experiences to help other people. And I have now validated experience, and I have in that I can share with people, and people that I do help uh, can relate to me and feel like, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about,
for
because we're going
sure.
through the same thing.
You had self-esteem issues, man. Right now, it doesn't even seem you have any self-esteem
Well,
issues. You,
growing up, I never did. But when I was looking for work and when I was looking for dates and love in life,
sure,
I had a little bit of a self-esteem
Sure.
issue,
of
because
course.
you're being rejected so many times, and you're like, what can I do? What can I do? And you're thinking, maybe at the end of it, you're probably thinking, maybe it is me. Maybe there's something about me that's not correct. But then over time, with the love of family and persistent friends, and um you kind of realize, okay, it's not me. But in that moment, you really take it personally, right?
I got a dumb side note question, side whatever. Um, stupid question. Okay, when when did you start using a wheelchair? I know you're born with cerebral palsy, but when do you
Yeah.
start using a wheelchair?
Well, it's funny you
Curious.
asked me that, actually, because I didn't come out of the womb and sat in the wheelchair, like, boom. That didn't happen. No, it was it was pretty cool. So the first part of my life, my parents didn't even know I had cerebral palsy, and the doctors didn't know. And
I learned that too, by the way. I don't know. I thought oh, your child has cerebral palsy, like before, giving birth, as you're checking the ultrasound, oh, he has cerebral palsy.
oh
I
yeah,
thought I
no,
thought that's, but nobody knows until they're born. And then they,
no, I gave my parents a big surprise. I think I gave myself a surprise too. Well, first of all, I was supposed to be born in December,
okay.
and I ended up being born in August, because who likes winter, right?
Nobody.
So
Nobody
I
likes
ended up
me.
I ended up showing up in August, and I think that's part and parcel of why I have CP. Now, had I known better, I probably would have stayed in there a little bit longer.
Oh,
Because I
oh,
was too eager to go party, so I had to come out in
I don't
August.
know if I should laugh at that.
Well, you should, because I laugh at it. But yeah. So anyway, for me, all jokes apart, the truth of the matter is, when I was born, um, I had lack of oxygen during birth. I was born a blue baby, and that 30, 30, 40 seconds of transferring me to my mother from my mother to the incubator is the lack of oxygen that caused me to have my legs be impacted, right? Of
Mhm.
that lack of oxygen. So but nobody knew at the time. They were just happy that I was alive. They knew I was kind of premature, and the doctors were really happy, because they didn't the situation was such that either it was a mom going to survive, or it was going to be me who was going to survive. So they didn't really know. It was a very tricky situation, because of early labor and things like that. Very complex situation. Um, and they were just happy that both mother and child were alive, and everything seemed healthy, things were good. And now that we're in the incubator, we're good, everything's cool. And then when the parents started doing regular checkups with the doctor, they realized, okay, well, Aleem's not really making his milestones of walking and crawling. What's going on? And it said, after doing some testing, they realized, indeed, that there was something a little more than just slow development. It was because of cerebral palsy. Being that my parents were both new to the country, they
Mhm.
were both in their 20s, and they were the only ones here in Canada. They had never heard of the word disability before, like cerebral palsy, and they had no idea what that was. And my mother would tell
Wow.
you if she was alive, that Nobody wanted to babysit me as well because they were really scared because
I'm sure.
I was really small, and everybody's like, as soon as they heard for disability, no, there was no babysitter that was willing to help because
Wow.
they'd be scared. They'd be like, oh, what if we did more damage?
Oh,
Yeah.
Right?
yeah.
So there was a little bit of the hurdle for them as well, growing, as I grew up. But they learned very quickly that I'm still the rambunctious kid that they weren't expecting because they thought, well, he's disabled. Like how active can he be? And granted, I wasn't very, like I wouldn't walk around obviously and knock things over or anything like that. But I was very rambunctious verbally. I would still be a kid, so I knew
Yep.
ways to get my parents to do stuff, even if I get my way somehow or the other, like just like any other kid. So I learned very quickly, how to get my way. If I wanted candy, how to do that. If I wanted to not sleep early, how to do that. So I still. But my parents went through a little bit of a learning phase too, like
Sure.
telling their parents, the grandparents that later came to Canada, which they had to sponsor and stuff. And my grandparents also were very, they were all shocked. They were like, "Well, what do we do now?" And so at first they had this guilt about, we can't say no to Aleem
Mm,
Yeah.
because he's in a wheelchair. So if Aleem says he wants candy, we'll give him candy. If Aleem says he wants to watch TV, we'll let him watch TV for longer. They had that little thing. Well, no, we can't say no to Aleem because
Hmm.
he's in a wheelchair, and we want to make sure that we treat him well. And I didn't know at the time any better, obviously, because I was really young. But at this point, I was really
sure.
enjoying my life because I was getting
Yeah.
what I
Because you
wanted,
get candy and
getting all like ice cream, candies, and all the stuff that other kids would want. I just get like that because as soon as my mom and dad said no, I went, oh, okay, I'll go to grandpa and grandma. Right? And they had to learn, they had to learn. And so my mom had to have a heart to heart with them and say, my mom was a very active person in my disability in terms of, she also went for counseling after to figure out how to deal with a kid who has a disability, right? So
Yeah.
she was also learning, and then she was bringing her
Cool.
learnings to the home and explaining to the grandparents, like, Aleem's a normal child. Just because he uses a wheelchair doesn't mean
Yeah.
that you have to treat him any differently. And so, they all had to wrap their head around, like, treat him like a normal kid.
Yo, you were really
And
active as a kid, first of all,
oh, I
because
was really active, like especially, um,
you're
like even if I didn't use my wheelchair, I would use the wall to walk with
oh,
furniture, or I would crawl around. I crawled a lot when I was a kid, so I would
and
get into things,
and
anything. You know what I mean? You find ways to do things when you can't walk, and for me, I didn't know any different, right? So I
yeah.
just did things the way I knew how. And I was very lucky, that I had very supportive parents and supportive grandparents, aunts and uncles, all alike.
Do you
None of them really said to me like, "Oh, you're disabled, so we don't really like you." Like, obviously, they don't
yeah.
say that, but they never showed it,
good.
and they treated me very normal.
That helps.
Did you have
I've always been treated very normal and very loved.
any
You know,
siblings?
no, I'm the only one. I
Is it
so
is it is it because of what you went through that no siblings?
Yes, partially because
That happens.
I want to go backtrack a little bit because you had
Of
asked me a
course.
question and I totally veered off. So to answer your question, the first time I used a wheelchair was probably when I was about 6.
Okay.
And there's a story behind that, and I'll go back to the other question that you had for me.
Sorry, bro.
So no worries, no worries. Actually, this is quite. I'm glad you're asking me these questions because I haven't talked about this in ages. So I'm if it helps other people, I'm hoping this will be good for people to know about. But when I first started in a wheelchair is when I went to preschool because I was born in Toronto and I went to school in Toronto. And in Toronto, what they did at the time is they used tricycles uh, for kids who had disabilities.
Okay.
So I was always, around, going around in tricycles in the school and everything like that. At home, my parents either carried me or I used a stroller. So it wasn't so yeah, my parents knew I was disabled. I had surgeries, to release my hamstrings a little bit. Because of that, I was able to walk with crutches. I think the first time that my mom and dad, when we moved to Edmonton in the 80s, the organization that we went to said to my parents that it's time that Aleem gets his first wheelchair. Okay. So as a 6 year old, I was like, cool, I get a wheelchair. You know, how cool is that? I get to run around and do stuff. But it's later in life that my mom explained to me that when she saw me in the wheelchair for the first time, that's when it really, really hit her.
Yeah.
Like, to see your 6 year old skinny little scrawny little kid in this wheelchair.
Yeah.
Um, she was like, she said, I didn't realize it was going to hit me so much, but it hit her like a ton of bricks to
Yeah.
realize that this is the life my son is now going to have. I think up to that point, she was just going, mom and dad were just going through the momentums. My
Yeah.
dad was busy working. So my mom did all the, she was a stay-at-home parent. So she was all the person who did all the running around with the doctors and the physiotherapies and the counseling. And then she brought all that information home to my dad and to the grandparents and everything like that, and articulating everything, advocating for me in school. So she did all that advocacy type work for me. And so she was very much aware of my disability. But I think to visually see me in a wheelchair up
Yeah.
to that point
Yeah.
was a breaking point for her.
Do you
That's
have
the
a
first time
picture
you.
of your first wheelchair?
Yep, first wheelchair, it was blue. I
Okay.
remember that. It was
Okay.
blue and I had a brown cushion, and it was quite small. It wasn't like this wheelchair I have now. It looked
Obviously.
like a wheelchair. Like, you would not be able to do much with it.
And now look, here you are, another one of the wheelie peeps that I'm talking to. So
Absolutely. So things can, I mean, if you had told my mom this ages ago, she probably would be like, okay, we'll see what happens.
was
You know what I
Dude,
mean?
before that, he ran a program for 9 years discussing environmental issues.
Oh my
Uh,
God, you
he
know
used to
that?
he used to write
Terry does a
articles.
deep dive. He goes
Bro,
he
come
goes
on.
hard on the socials.
Nobody's ever brought that up. That's
Really?
awesome.
No, man, what do you that's crazy. You did that how you were young when you did that, right?
Yeah. So, okay. So
Nine
here's the thing.
years he ran a program, bro.
Yep. Yeah.
I'm not
9 years.
dedicated for nothing. Maybe
Yeah.
I'll run this podcast for 9 years.
Oh
We'll
my
see.
God. I'm so impressed. You do your research really well. Um, yeah, so I mean, okay, so I do want to backtrack with the answer that you had for my parents first, and then I'll answer that.
Please.
So the reason why my parents did not have kids is not that my parents did not want kids, but because of my mom tried to have kids, and every time she would, the doctor would say to her that she's running the risk because her pregnancy was very difficult, and the doctor had said that if she was to have another child, that it's highly likely that she would end up having another child with a disability. So, but they couldn't guarantee that. And so
Right.
just because my parents said, okay, I think it's probably best we don't we don't go that route just in case. um and so that's why we have no more siblings. I mean, they had thought about adoption, but then things happened in my family which changed the dynamics of that. So we couldn't do that anymore. My dad left when I was 12. So after that, I obviously, things change, right?
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
Life
So
happens.
it
Do
does.
you
It totally
do you
does.
blame them for not having kids?
No, actually, I don't think I can blame them. I think
Okay.
they did the best they could. And, they did want children. They wanted to adopt. They wanted to have other children. But this is the cards they were dealt with. And instead of, you know, I can say this, but I come from an East Indian culture background, right? And there's a lot of stigma with disability still in the community, and my
Of
parents could have
course.
easily said, well, you know what, we don't want to deal with this. Maybe because there that was an option back then where parents were said that you can actually leave your child in a nursing home or a nursing home
Yep.
type place where they can grow up and in a group home type setting. Parents were given options like that because back in the
That's
day where
crazy.
when I was born, people were still having trouble with disabilities. And my parents said, no, we're going to raise our own kid. We want to, the community in those times, things are much, much better, but, not perfect, but much better. But back in the day when my mom and dad would bring me to an event or something like that, there'd be older aunts and uncles or, in the community that would say, oh, it's better that he had not lived because you have to deal with this now
Wow.
and
Yeah.
it's suffering for him and suffering for you. And my mom was
Wow.
shocked, and she would say, no, actually, I'm quite impressed and happy that I have a son, because I wasn't even gonna have a son because of the way things were going, and he could have died. And I'm so glad that I have a son. So she would, in the beginning, my mom would cry, come home and cry, and like just kind of leave it to herself. But over time, my mom got resilient, and she would actually talk back and say, "No,
Good.
actually, I'm very happy that I have my son, and having a son that's disabled is a blessing, and only people that are special get kids with disabilities. So I'm very lucky to have someone, and you should,
Absolutely.
and the faces that my mom said they would have was like they would be stunned because nobody had ever thought that way before.
Uh-huh.
So to answer your question, I think my parents did a really good job, and I don't blame them for not having other kids. If they could, they would have had kids, but because of the medical issues that mom had, and because of the situation that they couldn't have kids. But yeah, I actually appreciate both of them for all the stuff they've done, and the family, and my aunts and uncles, like my immediate aunts and uncles and my grandparents. They had never made me feel that I was less than, or they never made me feel like, wow, we can't deal with the disability, or why is our grandson disabled, or why is our nephew disabled, or no, we can't take him to events. They never did that.
Yeah.
My mom and dad
Mm.
worked really hard to take me out to events back in the day when I was little, in the 70s and the 80s. I'm now dating myself, so if I look young, thank you, and if I look old, that's great. Um, but
Distinguished.
There was a time
distinguished.
I was gonna
That's
ask
right,
him, I'm like,
distinguished.
how old are you? I thought you were younger than me.
No, I won't tell you. It's a
Okay,
secret. It's
it's
a
fine.
secret. I've said too much. Um, but
I
yeah,
want I want
they were. Sorry, go ahead.
no. I'm the king of interrupting people. I just wanted to know was, and I'm sorry to ask you this, but was your mom around to see the accomplishments you went through, like being a model on that runaway? Did I just say runaway?
Run
Run,
away,
runway of
run away.
dreams. Uh,
No,
and
actually,
being on
unfortunately,
push. That is crazy. You know.
she missed all of it.
Mm,
She missed all of it. So, um, but I'm hoping that she's seeing everything by being my
he does.
angel now, right?
Yep.
Um, so yeah, like she basically, my mom and dad worked really hard to take me out to all events that were cultural events. Because usually back in that time era, back in that time frame long ago,
Yeah.
parents were known to leave their kids at home because they were too scared to either take them out. They were really embarrassed to take them out places, so they would just leave them at home. And so my parents made an extra effort to make sure that I went to all these events, even if it meant that
Cool.
my mom had to carry me, or my dad had to carry me, or whatever. They still made the effort to make sure that I was out and about. And I think that's probably where my advocacy probably would have started, because I was already being a trailblazer by having my parents say, "Hey, here's my kid, and he has a wheelchair, but we brought him along." And a lot of parents would tell them like, "Oh wow, it's so cool that you guys did that. Maybe we'll do that with our kid next time."
That's
You
all it
know?
takes. That's all it takes.
Man,
Yeah. So go
there's
ahead.
just so much to talk to you about. Like we can get into particular subjects. Like when you model, that's crazy, how you were so comfortable doing that. And one of the videos, which I was telling Nick about, I saw you wearing Tommy Hilfiger, right? And I was thinking, wow, that must not be comfortable wearing that. And then I realized that it was an adaptive piece of clothing. Did Tommy Hilfiger make that themselves, the adaptive clothing, or did someone customize what you were wearing?
Well, it was, and actually, to be honest with you, um, Terry, you're gonna kill me, but I'm gonna go backtrack to your environment question.
Dude, this is what I do to people. I go from there to there to
You
there.
know
So
why I'm gonna, you know why I'm gonna do that? Because you're the only one that has brought it up, and since you have brought it up, I wanna address it. Because I think that's what's gonna make your podcast unique. Is you're the only one that's addressed it.
I love you, buddy. Thank you.
So, um, so for the environment thing, I was in elementary, and my and I had seen this. When you're younger, they bring all these guest speakers to your school, and I heard about this boy named Clinton Hill, and he was 9 years old, and he really cared about the environment, and I said to myself by the end of the presentation, I said, well, if he could do it, you know, why can't I? And I want to make a difference. So it was that from that time on, I started small, and I
Right.
started my own environmental club from my apartment.
Okay.
And I didn't know what to do or anything, but I would just have little flyers everywhere, like, let's save the environment, let's save the. This is when being an environmentalist was not cool. It was more like an annoyance,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I
So
remember
it's
that.
like, yeah, it's pretty
Uh,
annoying. Like, who's this little kid who cares about this environment? Why do we care right now?
yeah.
Um, I think if I was doing it now, I would be very successful. But as a kid growing up, it was just a cute thing that I did, and people were just like, "Oh, okay, we'll support you anyway." And so, I kind of wrote articles in the letter of the day, and this is when they didn't have internet still. So I would call these organizations with the phone, and actually, you
Actually
know,
talk to somebody.
yeah, actually talk to somebody, and I would call the news, the journal, and I'd call the Sun, and I'd be like, "Oh, I have something to talk about, but the environment, blah blah blah, and this is my club," and they'd be like, "Oh, how old are you?" And I'd be like, "I'm 9 years old," whatever. And back in the day when you said you're nine, they cared. So the editor would come on the phone, they'd talk to me, and then they'd say, "Oh, can we do an interview with you?" And I said, "Sure, you can do an interview." And they would, but I wouldn't tell anybody
Yeah.
till till the day before. And
Mm.
I actually wouldn't tell my mom and dad because I was scared that they get mad at me. So I would do it at my grandma's house.
Uh,
So one time, the reporter showed up, knocked at my grandma's door,
Oh
and
my.
my grandma opened the door, and there's this big cameraman guy there, and the reporter's there, and there's like, "We're here to speak to Aleem Jaffer about his environmental
Liam,
post."
what did you
That's
do?
awesome.
And my grandma and grandpa were terrified. So the first thing my grandma did is to just hold on, called my mother and said that I had done this. And my mother said, "Can I please speak to him?" So she talked to me for a bit, and I said, "Mom, I need to do this for my environmental club and whatever." And. So my mom's like, "Okay, that's okay." But next time, please tell us that you're gonna do stuff like this because we need to be ready. You know what I
Full
mean?
camera crew shows up. Jeez.
Yeah.
Yo,
And back in the
it's
days, they did show up with the big camera crew. It's
Yeah.
not like
yeah,
now where
yeah.
they vet at you and stuff. They're pretty nice and easy going back then. And yeah, so we have this interview, and I over time I grow in terms of I start very small at 4 members, and then I said no, I need more members, so I wrote articles in the paper, and then I had people mailing in stuff to me saying they want to be members, and then I kind of established that in my elementary school, and then during recess we would have like meetings once a week. And we would start by, this is what we're going to do for the month. So let's say it's light saving month or whatever. So how many
Yeah.
times a day have you turned off the lights and stuff like
Yeah.
that, keeping track of that. And then we'd give awards out in the assemblies.
That's amazing.
And then I continued that through junior high. So yeah,
Dude,
all through.
I hope my mom is not listening to this because she'd be like, You were nothing. You did nothing. Like,
I doubt that. I would get that.
I
But partially because I did all that is because I was bored at home. I
sure.
hated being idle. I wanted to keep myself busy, and being the only child, there's only so much you can. My friends were my adults, people around me, right? So uh, that's how I kept myself busy. I think that's the way I kind of enjoyed doing things, so I kind of kept going that way. And then one thing's led to another, and I had my own environment. It was called Kids for Protecting the Environment,
okay,
and
That's amazing.
yeah, so it was fun times, and I got a lot of credit because of it. So I had articles written about me, a lot of acknowledgement from schools. So it was fun times.
you still have connections to Clinton Hill?
No, actually, I don't.
Okay,
But he was the boy, and his story is what inspired me. And so
nice.
all credit goes to that dude. You know, um, he had a good vision, and I was glad that I was able to carry that forward in some shape or form.
Awesome.
Well, Aleem, I have to say, being an activist from basically the beginning and up until today, what an amazing story. I'm glad that, it proves the power of a good supportive home system. You know what I mean? What a could have been what could have been was a whole nother road, but the road you're on since day one, simply amazing. Uh, thank you very much for coming on our show and telling us about all these things. There's so many more that we didn't even get into. Terry's got a whole other full page of Wikipedia stuff he probably has on you.
Yeah, I know. I'm quite impressed.
I'm gonna keep in touch with you, man. Like,
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely, I have lots to share. So,
uh,
and time was limited. So if you ever feel like, we want to continue, just let me know. I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. Thank you.
awesome.
Thank you so much for sharing with us today, Liam.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you tell your Nick that we say hi.
Okay, I will definitely do that. And I know my Nick will say, "Did you say hi on my behalf?" So here he goes. He's saying hi.
All right, brother. I will
Awesome.
talk to you next week, my friend.
Definitely, man.
All
Thanks,
right.
everybody.
Thank you for the opportunity.
So check us out at 40belowzero.com. That's 4 letter T below zero.com. Or feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. Our email address is info@40belowzero.com. Our personal Instagram account are for Nix, it's Nix_V713. Or for Terry, it's what's_MS. Awesome. Looking forward to hearing from you guys. We'll talk soon.